सत श्री अकाल जी, मैं गुरिंदर चड्ढा हूँ and तुसी देख रहे हो Bollywood Hungama.
It's a huge honor and privilege to have Gurinder Chadha with us. Her movie is coming up, Partition 1947, which is called The Viceroy's House in UK. It has already released. Reviews are glowing. It talks about a very, very contentious issue related with Indian history. We'll talk about much more about that. Ma'am, pleasure having you on Bollywood Hungama first.
Nice to be here, thank you.
Okay, now I was reading a few of the reviews and it is being said that there are all sorts of views which are there because Britishers when they are judging your movie, they are judging it in a different context altogether. I read somewhere that someone has said that beware of its dark agenda, obviously because you're not presenting the British point of view in a very flattering light, because somewhere you're saying that it was the entire agenda was from the Britishers side to just divide India.
Yes, absolutely.
So that India doesn't become a superpower.
Kind of, yes. I mean, for me, the history that I had always been brought up with was that partition happened because the Britishers had decided it was time to leave, and then we all started fighting with each other. So Mountbatten had no choice but to divide the country, and so partition was our fault. You know, this is what I had always been told at school, and this is what I had been grown up with. And I think a lot of the people in the world and in India believe somehow, this is what happened. But in doing my research, I found out that this was all untrue, actually, and that there was a whole other agenda of why partition happened. It was a political act. It wasn't a reaction to what was going on. And in many ways, Mountbatten was kind of the fall guy because there were people working behind the scenes to ensure that partition happened.
The promo also conveys that there is someone that you come to know that who was that man behind that entire plan.
इसमें हिंदुस्तान का भविष्य लिखा है।
किसने कहा? माउंटबैटन ने?
नहीं, वो इस बारे में कुछ नहीं जानते।
तो ये है जिना की जिद की वजह। आखिर किसी ने मुझे कुछ क्यों नहीं बताया?
तलवार तो आपके हाथ में है। प्लान का नाम याद दिलाऊं? The Mountbatten Plan.
And as I was reading a few of the reviews, it's also said that British they had run out of money after the World War, and they didn't have the wherewithal to basically continue.
Well, the point is, my film starts with a quote: "History is written by the victors."
History is written by the victors, yes.
And so this is my chance as a British Indian to tell the history from the way I see it. And the reality was that Britain in India had been brought to its knees by Gandhiji, by the Quit India movement. They would never want to admit that, but actually all the civil unrest, all the problems, had made it very hard for the British to rule. So also then during the war, Nehruji, Gandhiji, they refused to support the British. But Churchill, the British, they needed Indian soldiers, for the war. And so a deal was struck that, okay, we will give India independence after the war so long as you support the Allies now.
Right.
And America was also very keen on this position because America said, unless you promise the Indians independence, anything could happen. The Japanese could come down and take India,
Right.
So America pushed Britain too to announce a leaving date and announce that they would hand India back. So in that context, after the war, suddenly Churchill is sitting there thinking, okay, now I have to hand India back. And I don't really want to hand India back, because Churchill knew that if he handed India back, that would be the end of the British Empire. Because once India went, every other country would go. So for Churchill, it was a question of the empire, holding on to the empire versus Gandhiji, Nehruji, it was like they had brought the empire to its knees. So Churchill was trying to find a way to still hold on to having a presence in this region, even though he knew he had promised to hand India back. So partition became part of this puzzle, this juggling for Britain. And I feel that at that time, had Nehruji and Gandhiji and Patel Saab and everyone, had they been aware of what the real British agenda was,
Right.
The map of India would be very different today,
No, no, absolutely, absolutely. The map of India definitely would have been much more different. Do you also feel that, I also read somewhere that this movie is as contemporary as it was maybe at any point of time. Do you also feel that maybe you're seeing that entire divide and rule element, it is still prevalent in India? We are still divided in many ways. You're speaking about Gandhiji, but you know, these days what has become fashionable is to just deride Gandhi, to just look down upon Gandhi, to just find faults with Gandhi for no rhyme or reason. So on surface, he's still the father of the nation, but many people say it's Godse who celebrated much more than Gandhi today.
Well, I think that these are turbulent times, not just here, everywhere.
Right.
When we started making the film, you know, Barack Obama was president in the White House, not Trump. There was no Syrian refugee crisis. And there was no Brexit in Europe and no rise of the right in the same way, you know, during the Brexit time. So the world really has become quite fractured, and we're seeing a move to the right, you know, globally. And I think that the film talks about what happens when people are divided, you know, and in the end who actually suffers, you know. So that's what makes it very contemporary. And it sort of asks you to look at the geopolitics behind those divisions, see what is people's agendas for doing that. And I feel that what I've tried to do with the film is, yes, look back at what actually happened 70 years ago politically, but then also move forward and try and put a blanket of balm over everything. Remember the people who suffered, but now also move forward. And I think that, you know, we're seeing things can change. We've just had an election in Britain.
Exactly. I'm about to come to that. Labour has showed amazing sort of revival.
Yes. So the right-wing UKIP party that had a lot of favour has suddenly gone, vanished, you know, because they pushed for Brexit. Brexit happened, and it turns out most people didn't want that to happen, you know. And now in this election, Jeremy Corbyn has managed to get a lot of young people behind him. And now in Britain, the question is, everyone is saying, well, young people want to be part of the political process. How can we woo them? All political parties are looking, how do we get the young people's vote? So young people have now entered the political frame in England, saying we want to say in our future, we want to know what's happening, and we don't agree with the way these politicians are running our country in England. So we've experienced some fantastic people power, and I'm eternally optimistic that if enough people speak up for what is right, you know, it should happen.
Right. You know, what has happened in recent times, South Korea as well, the government is liberal now.
Yes.
And there are voices that they would want like a united Korea for the matter, which is like a very unlikely sort
contentious
of
issue.
Contentious.
Yeah.
But the fact is that at least that intention has been displayed, which is in itself shows a lot.
Yes.
Why do you see that India and Pakistan in today's time, they're so divided? They're so deeply divided.
Well, I think you have to look at it in a particular way.
Even like a cricket match becomes like a matter of life and death.
Yeah.
And as if like things will happen. Social media just goes for the toss completely.
Yeah, but I think there are also instances where people don't want those divisions, where people do hang together.
Absolutely.
And I think for me, my homeland is there. My homeland is, ancestral homeland is Rawalpindi and Jhelum.
Absolutely.
I can't get a visa to go to my ancestral homeland, but even though there may be a boundary there, for me, you know, I revel in the fact that I speak Punjabi. You know, there's a connection. I love the music. I listen to Rahat Fateh Ali Khan, all the Sufi masters.
You have a Sufi song in the movie.
Yes, we have a Sufi song in the film, and I chose Mastaqalandar because it belongs to everybody.
Absolutely, it's a Sufi song.
It's universal. So fashion, food, all these things connect us. So I think that whilst some people may look for divisions, if you look, there are connections too.
Absolutely, there are, and one should definitely cherish that. So it's very easy to divide. It's very different. It's more important to actually talk about love and togetherness and humanity more than anything else. It may seem romantic, but I think that's the ultimate reality at the end of the day.
Well, I think one of the things that's important to remember when you see my film is, yes, It is made by somebody who is British and Indian.
Born in Kenya.
Born in Kenya, exactly, African.
Right.
British, Indian, African woman, but most importantly is a mother, you know.
Right.
It's not often that women get to make big historical epic films, and certainly not mothers. So it's a film about a very sad, turbulent time in our history of all our nations. I'm including Britain in this, you know, or the subcontinent. All of us, it's a turbulent time in our history, but told through the lens of a mother. And a mother's role for her children is to give them moral guidance, give them a moral compass with which to live their lives in the world. Mothers don't really go around teaching children how to hate people.
Absolutely. They should
Mothers
not.
teach them how to get on with people, how to contribute to society, how to build a better world. So in that respect, the film is definitely a mother's perspective on the partition in 1947.
Fatma Bhutto, she was rather critical of the
Yes.
film, but at the same time, you've also said that there have been many Pakistanis in Britain. They've come up to you and they've thanked you for just telling them about their history, because they didn't know much about their
Yes.
history. So how do you look at this dichotomy? Because there will always be people who will have certain
Yes, of
viewpoints
course.
which is different from what you have, and there will be people who wouldn't want maybe a different context to come into the picture, because it suits them that they continue the similar context, because it adds to their political atmosphere. Right?
Absolutely, you've hit the nail on the head. The point is, this is a sad period in a lot of people's history. A lot of people would rather forget about it, and a lot of people would rather see it from different perspectives.
Right.
For me, this is my perspective. I'm very clear. It's a British, Indian, Punjabi female point of view of what happened to my family, why that happened at that time in 1947. I can totally appreciate and understand Pakistanis from Pakistan, you know, might have a different perspective, you know. I can appreciate Indians having a different perspective. And it's a very sensitive subject. People get very upset about it, you know, and so everyone has their right to be upset. Everyone has their right to be angry. It's part of the territory, you know. For me, you know, I tried very hard to make it a balanced film. I tried very hard not to misrepresent anybody. I wanted to lay the facts down, show the political leaders what the discussions were between them all, and show the agendas beyond what people might have known was going on, and see the impact of that of the ordinary people working at Viceroy's house, the ordinary Hindu, Muslim, Sikhs working in Rashtrapati Bhavan at that time, of course, was known as Viceroy's house.
Absolutely.
So what I have done, which I'm very pleased about, is generate debate. The debate of the issue is important, because most people around the world, it'll be shocking to hear this, but most people around the world don't even know that India was partitioned. They have no knowledge of that history. In Britain, people are coming up to me going, what? I didn't even know this happened, and I thought I knew about Britain and Indian history. In Australia, people were shocked because they had no idea that this is what happened in the last days of the Raj, and being part of the Commonwealth, you know, they also had a lot of interest in the subject. But also in Australia, I found out that once the British had decided to leave, they were like leaving in droves before independence. So there was nobody left to look after India. There was no police, there was no boundary, there was very few people, because ships were going back. So a lot of Australians were shipped in those last few months.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, as Air Force men, you know, and I met a woman in Sydney who'd come to see the film, and then after she invited me back to her house, and she had all this memorabilia of her at school in India in 1947, and all the flags that were waving. You can see this on my Facebook page, actually.
I'll do that.
You do that. And then she talked about how her father was head of the Indian Air Force at that time, or very senior, as an Australian, and he spent all his time doing mercy missions, taking Muslims that side of the border, bringing Hindus and Sikhs from that side of the border here. So he just did like 20, 30 flights a day going back and forth. So this is a part of Australian history as well. So it's, for me, it's great to have been able to make a film where people actually know what actually happened. But for us as Indians, and particularly those who were affected by partition, directly or personally, like I was or am, you know, I think there's...
Your grandmother, I believe...
Yeah, my grandmother was in Jhelum, and overnight, you know, she saw a lot of violence, and they said, you have to leave. And she said, मैं किथे जाऊंगी, सरदार जी आएंगे तो मैं जाऊंगी. Meaning, you know, I can't leave. Yeah, my husband will come and then I'll go. I don't know where to go. Yeah. And then one day an army truck came. They said, now, in the truck. So she had 6 children with her at the time, young kids. They just all got picked up, put on a truck. They managed to grab a little bit of wheat, I think, and she managed to grab a little bit of jewelry. And they left. And they were for 3 days on the road without any food and water. They couldn't stop in Amritsar because there was cholera. They wouldn't let people off the trains in all these places near the border because there was nowhere, nothing, no food, nothing. It was also the rainy season, so it was a lot of disease. So in the end, after 3 days of no food and water, the little girl, she died of starvation. You know, my bua, who would have been 72 today. So my family really did suffer, and all my uncles and aunts are still traumatized by what they saw at that time. So it's a personal film for me, as well as a political film. But now I know what happened, the truth. You know, I feel I have some closure. Because my mother grew up in Rawalpindi, and the other history that I had been told by her was that ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਸੀ, ਬੜੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਸੀ. ਜਦੋਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਈਦ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਮਠਿਆਈ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਸੀ, ਜਦੋਂ ਸਾਡਾ ਗੁਰਪੁਰਬ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਸੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਠਿਆਈ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਸੀ, ਜਦੋਂ ਦੀਵਾਲੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਸੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਮਨਾਉਂਦੇ ਸੀ. ਸੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਰਲ ਮਿਲ ਕੇ ਇੱਜ਼ਤ ਨਾਲ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਸੀ. ਅਸੀਂ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਅਚਾਨਕ ਇਹ ਗੋਰਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਕੋਈ ਕਾਲਾ ਜਾਦੂ ਕੀਤਾ ਸਾਡੇ ਉੱਪਰ, ਤਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਹੁਣ ਤੱਕ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਕੀ ਕੀਤਾ, ਪਰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਪਤਾ ਜੇ ਗੋਰਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਕੁਝ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ. So that was the other thing my mother had always said to us. And so now I'm be able to tell her, show her the film and say, हाँ, तुसी ठीक कह रही सी, Mom, you were right. ए कालू जादू कीता सी गोरिया ने.
Absolutely. Ma'am, you know, when you look back at the entire events, the way they happened, howsoever you may read about it, but you know, one thing which is so ironical, which is so strange as well, because as the movie says as well, that 20 crores Hindus and Sikhs, they wanted to stay back in India, and 3 crores Muslims, quite a few of them, they were not too sure that whether they possibly...
It was at the time the population was 400. There was 400 million people, and 300 million were Hindu and Sikhs. We wanted a united India, and there were about 100 million Muslims, some of whom wanted a separate country.
Correct.
Not all.
No, absolutely. I've read Abul Kalam Azad's book as well.
Yes.
And what all really happened, and what all certain, I think,
Maulana Azad.
Maulana Azad and certain, I think, statement that Nehruji made in 1946, after which the Kolkata riots immediately took place, and Jinnah Sahib came back into the, because he was in a dormant stage. He was not really relevant from 1940 to 46.
I have actually also done a documentary on this, a very detailed documentary for BBC History, where I've gone back to 1933 and looked at where did the idea of Pakistan come from, how did it happen, because for many years people didn't even care about the Muslim League and Jinnah Sahib's ideas, and it only came into favour once the British realized they could just use him.
Absolutely. You know, my question was, ma'am, that do you find it a bit sad, and that in a way it was a tussle between, say for example, technically speaking, like say Hindus and Muslims, but a community like Sikhs, for that matter, who were there in Pakistan, who were there in India as well, like in terms of before the partition, many of the big Gurdwaras are still there in Pakistan.
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you find it a bit sad that a community which is extremely like loyal community, which had nothing to do with the entire enmity that was going on, and the power struggle in many ways which was going on as well, it got caught in fire, and maybe it was affected the most, because that's where the borders were drawn.
Well, undoubtedly, I think Sikhs lost an awful lot. I mean, many people lost, But I think the Sikhs lost an awful lot during partition because the majority of their land, farmland, rich land was on that side. Also the Guru Nanak Dev Ji's birthplace, or the Gurdwaras, the monuments, you know, were on that side. Maharaja Ranjit Singh's palaces, you know, there in Lahore and around on that side. So I think for Sikh history and Sikh culture, yeah, a lot was lost, and I do feel sad. I'm happy that people can visit the Gurdwaras on these special visas, you know, but I do feel sad that I can't just go and get a visa and go and visit.
Why can't you get it?
Because I'm of Indian origin. So I tried to get a visa recently to go for my BBC documentary, and I didn't get a visa.
That's sad. That's sad.
Because even I've got caught up in the, you know, crossfire. Yeah.
That's extremely sad, actually.
It is sad because it's my ancestral land at the end of the day.
In fact, Kuldeep Nair Sahab, in his autobiography, he has written that this is not confirmed, but it is what said from very reliable sources, that Jinnah Sahab, after the partition, he was in a flight, he was going somewhere, and he looked down and he saw what was happening below, the sort of mayhem that was there. People were cutting each other, and he said that ye maine kya kar diya, what have I done? So it is not confirmed, but this is, he said that from reliable sources it was said. But obviously it is something that
well, I actually think that I don't think any of the leaders thought that the violence would happen like it did.
Absolutely.
I don't think Nehruji, Jinnah Sahab, I don't think any of them thought it was going to be like this. I mean, Jinnah wanted a secular country. He wanted everyone to stay. He wanted it to be a home for Hindus and Muslims and Sikhs.
He used to drink.
Yeah, absolutely. He just thought instead of a Hindu government, it'll be a Muslim government. It's the same. He didn't realize, nobody realized the extent of what would happen. However, my research has shown that a lot of the violence was orchestrated. It wasn't neighbor turning on neighbor, as we've always been told. There was militia, there was organized gangs. People were going out trying to grab land, grab property, grab businesses. It was an orchestrated economic land grab that some people knew was coming, so were able to go out and choose the best bits of property and business and that. This is something that has come up in my research.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm looking forward to the movie for sure. There's absolutely no doubt about that.
इसमें वो सब कुछ है जो आपको चाहिए. इसमें हिंदुस्तान का भविष्य लिखा है. मुझसे कहा गया था कि ये मैं आपको दे दूं.
किसने कहा? माउंटबेटन ने?
नहीं, वो इस बारे में कुछ नहीं जानते.
Lady Mountbatten's character, apparently you've portrayed in a someone who was the voice of reason, and because mostly these days, so we hear about Lady Mountbatten in a frivolous manner because of the links with Nehruji. But Gillian Anderson has played that role, and I think she's got a very good response critically as well. And I think she played a big role in just clearing the cobwebs from the mind of Mr. Mountbatten as well.
Well,
the dilemmas
the thing
that he had or whatever.
The thing about Lady Mountbatten was that she was far more politically astute and cleverer than her husband. Lord Mountbatten was a very charming man, you know, but he wasn't very politically on the button. He had lost a ship, you know, in Southeast Asia. He'd lost that part of the world, you know, in battles. And he was more concerned about the pomp and splendor of being the viceroy, you know, the costumes, the medals. He loved all that. And he really was in above his head. He didn't know what he was doing, and he was trying to make decisions, and he thought just by being charming, he could charm people into agreeing with him. And, you know, and he was very like, come on chaps, let's all shake hands and sort it out. You know, he had that kind of attitude. Whereas Edwina was much more politically on the button, and her job really kept being to sort of tell him to take it slow, to wait, don't act in speed, think about what you're doing. Don't just act fast, you know. So we show that. We show their marriage and the tensions within it. But also, I really do believe that Edwina Mountbatten really loved India and really tried to do a lot of good things while she was here. And you can see there's endless footage of her in refugee camps and Red Cross centres and places where she did not need to go. Previous viceroys, wives of the viceroys, they never left. They stayed in their blooming palaces and stuff. But she, at any opportunity, was out with people, talking to people. Even if she couldn't do anything, she was there. Refugees would sit and cry to her, tell her what had happened, and all she could is put, you know, her hand on their hands. So again in the research, you know, that was something that's been hidden about her. So I felt that that was a very human story, you know, to include in this film that I was making, that really tried to be a very human story towards everybody.
When I look at the promo, I think the production design is looking very, very interesting, because for a movie like this, it's very important that it should not be too ornamental and it should be as real as possible. And you know, you can feel that granular feel, and मिट्टी की एक आप एक महसूस कर सकते हैं. Someone who's not lived in India, who's lived abroad, that's really commendable. So could you please tell us something about the production design? Then you have music by A.R. Rahman and these aspects. The camera work looks very interesting.
It's beautiful, the camera work.
Yeah,
well, the important thing was to make it look like a very rich, sumptuous British costume drama in the way that films had previously been made, like Gandhi. You know, I didn't want it to look any less than that. And so we worked very hard on getting that rich period look. And also my cameraman knew the brief. So, you know, we spent extra time on those big lavish shots. And the design is their costume, of course, you know, all this was very meticulously done. And I think the British do this stuff very, very well.
Absolutely.
So I wanted it to look like every other great British costume drama, except that it had a punch, a sting in its tail, if you like, you know, for other British films that had gone before, you know, this one was different.
30 करोड़ हिंदू और सिख एकजुट हिंदुस्तान चाहते हैं, पर 3 करोड़ मुसलमानों में से कई ऐसा नहीं चाहते।
जिन्ना से आप कहिए कि पहली सरकार वो बनाए।
बापूजी, ये मुमकिन नहीं है।
कभी-कभार सर्जरी ही मरीज को बचा सकती है।
I think that A.R. Rahman did an incredible job, as ever he does, but in this case I think he was initially quite reticent about taking the film. When I suggested I wanted to make a film on Partition, I wanted him to do the music. So he wasn't sure, and a few times I said, you know, please, I'm relying on you, you're the perfect person. And it wasn't until I actually showed him the cut of the film that he then said, right, yeah, I want to do this film. This is a great message for the world, and we should do it. And then he just threw himself into it. He brought all his spirituality, as you know, man of very few words, but in his music he speaks 1,000 words.
Absolutely.
And so I had a fantastic time in Chennai with him, working on Gandhiji's theme, Nehruji's theme, the British theme, the Partition theme, the Lovers theme. It was all very rich and period, and you know, he would play tunes on the piano. After he saw the film, he got up and he sat on the piano and he just played something. And I happened to put my phone on. I just thought, let me just film this, you know. And then later, I put it away. Then later, when he was trying to work out what to do, many weeks later, he said he's stuck with the main theme. He's stuck, what can he do? And then I said, what about what you played me? He said, what did I play you? I don't remember. I said, you played me the most awesome tune. And he said, oh, Bitani, I don't remember it. And then I emailed him the recording that I had done.
Oh, wow.
And then he was like, oh yeah, this is great. Because this was his pure reaction after watching the cut.
Absolutely.
So that became the main theme of the film.
Background score.
Background score, but also the theme, the main tune for the song.
What is it called?
It's called Do Dilon Ke. So
Dilon Ke.
2 hearts, yeah.
Great. Now, one question that comes to my mind as well is that you living in UK, you've been there for many times, you're a British citizen as well. Don't you feel that you're taking a bit of a chance that you're actually talking about whatever designs that Britishers had at that point of time? Because as I mentioned to you, one of the reviews say that beware of its dark agenda. So does it bother, because you're taking a chance? It's a risky proposition for you.
Yes, it is risky. It's a subject matter that's risky, but I think, you know, I live in a country in Britain where I think there are many people who are very keen to understand the past and learn about the past from our perspective. There are many people there who are ashamed of the British Empire, you know. Some aren't, some wish they still had the empire, but there are many who feel very bad about colonialism and the role of the British and other Europeans in other countries around the world. So I think for them, they felt that this was a very measured film about the role of the British in India, and I didn't want to make a very angry film where I blamed them, you know, with a hammer. I wanted to make a film that would make them actually feel to take some responsibility for what happened. So in that sense, it does, for them it has a dark agenda, but for me it has the truth, you know.
Absolutely. Ma'am,
but that's what makes me a British Indian filmmaker.
No, absolutely.
You know, that I can do both. I can look at both sides. I can tell that story from that point of view and this from this point of view, and find the truth in both. There's no point in making a film that just keeps the Indians happy or just keeps the British happy, because that's denying half of myself. I have to make a film that addresses both countries and looks at the history from both countries' perspective.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Two more questions in the present context. That do you foresee any sort of resistance, considering the sort of socio-political atmosphere that we have in India? People tend to react to almost anything, and do you foresee any sort of resistance from the censor board, because censor board is having a lot of issues with a lot of things these days?
We've had no problems with the censor board.
Okay, so already cleared?
Censor board is cleared.
Okay.
Film was cleared. Before I made the film, I met Mr. Modi. In fact, I met Mr. Manmohan Singh as well, his predecessor, because that's how long I've been working on the film.
Sure.
But when I met Mr. Modi, I told him, you know, what I was doing and what I wanted to do, and as a British Indian director, my approach and everything. And he was fine, you know. He said, good, good, you know, patted me on the back, said, good that you have an Indian sensibility, you know. And then in terms of censorship, yeah, no one has really complained. And the film you're seeing here is the film we saw in England, you know, it's the same.
Now, ma'am, we'll end the interview on a slightly more lighter note. Actually, we can talk about a lot of things like Beckham and a lot of other things as well, Pride and Prejudice. But I'm sure that you have a lot of other things to do as well. This interview will get like really long. So we'll cut it short and we'll end it on a more lighter note. Actually,
yeah.
After, मतलब मैंने आपकी आँखों में नमी लेके मैं आ चुका हूँ. So let's now bring a smile to your face as well. So rapid fire with Gurinder Chadha now.
Oh my goodness, chalo.
3 things you feel only female directors can understand.
Men. Men and men. Male directors want to show men in a particular light, you know, but we as women, we can really go deeper and show men in a much more complex way, I think.
Right. A man can never claim that about a woman.
No,
I can
never, and don't even try.
Yeah, they shouldn't even try. The film that inspires you the most?
Oh, I have several films, but one film that is very inspirational to me is my father's favorite film, which was Beju Bavra.
Oh wow.
I listen to the songs all the time, makes me very emotional. I love the emotionality of the film, brings me closer to my dad, you know, who's passed away. I love Tokyo Story by Ozu, Japanese film, which is about the older generation keeping their values of civility, of graciousness, politeness, while the younger generation it doesn't seem to follow those values anymore, but the older generation don't let it bother them. It's a very beautiful film, Tokyo Story. Very Indian in many ways as well. And then one of my favorite films is It's a Wonderful Life.
Wow.
Very life-affirming. Watch it every Christmas. It's a great film.
What is your favorite food, ma'am?
Well, I like all kinds of cuisines, but my favorite dish of all kind, forever, whenever I travel and I come home, I have to have this dish. Whenever I'm sick, I have to have this dish. Whenever I'm feeling stressed, I have to have this dish. It's my #1 comfort dish, and it's aloo vadiya. Totally my favorite.
Where do you enjoy shooting the most? Any country, any place?
I enjoy shooting wherever I am in the world. It's a fantastic achievement for me to get a film off the ground, you know, for anyone. So any director is just happy when they're shooting. It takes so much work to get to that place. But I have to say I thoroughly enjoy shooting in India because I have a great backup team in India, and I get looked after really well by the teams here. But at the same time, you know, nothing like shooting at home as well in England.
Okay.
So both.
Okay, ma'am, your favorite Indian actress other than Huma Qureshi? You work with Aishwarya as well.
Yes. I'm going to say Zora Sehgal.
Zora Sehgal, wow. Yeah. Best choice.
Best choice.
Brilliant choice.
She was the first Indian actress I worked with.
Brilliant choice. Any other historic event you would also like to make a movie about?
Yes. I'm working right now with the BBC on a big project series on Maharaja Dalip Singh, Maharaja Ranjit Singh, and their children, and Queen Victoria. So for me, this is a very important story about, again, my history and told through the lens of British and Indian. I want to show the relationship between these two royal households.
Okay, if you were to cast a Bollywood Khan, who would it be in any of your films?
Well, really, I would like to cast all three of them and do a three-starer with Shah Rukh, Amir and Salman. All three of them, like Amar Akbar Anthony.
Okay.
Do something like that. Khan, Khan and Khan.
Khan and Khan. A recent Bollywood film that you saw and you really liked?
Actually, the most recent last one I saw was, well, my favorite one for a long time was Vicky Donor. I thought Vicky Donor was amazing, absolutely amazing film.
Right.
I loved it. I liked the Munabai films. I thought they were very good. I thought this, the Salman Khan film with the little girl from Pakistan was lovely.
Bajrangi Bhaijaan.
Yeah, I thought Sanjay Leela Bansali's film, the big historical one with yeah, I thought that was a very good piece of work. These are the last few that I've seen. Dangal was amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. What makes Gurinder Chadha different from all the other female directors? What do you think makes you different?
I am that unique blend of British, Indian, and with a beating Punjabi heart.
Beating Punjabi heart. Okay, last question, ma'am. Describe your film Partition 1947 in just 3 words. If you can describe it in 3 words, ma'am.
Epic, urgent, empathetic.
Epic.
And human.
Human. Fantastic. Gurinder Chadha ji, it was wonderful talking to you, and looking forward to 1947 Partition for sure as soon as possible. And we hope to see much more movies from you, and I'm sure that this movie brings a closure to you once people watch it and you watch it with people in India.
Yeah.
I'm sure it brings closure to you, and I hope that you get to go to Pakistan.
Yes.
I genuinely hope that happens. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
That's all we have from Bollywood Hungama. Keep on watching.
Yeah.